What up, everyone? Welcome to Designated Reports Boxing Podcast, Episode 10. I'm your host. As you know, my name is Louie, and that is your co-host. His name is Gene. What up, Gene?
Yo, what's good, bro?
Ain't shit, man. Ain't shit. You know, we've been rolling here the last couple of weeks because of all the fights. I do want to start off in saying that you were wrong. Finally, you missed one.
You were wrong, too.
Nico Damas is not the genie in the bottle, so to speak. Great fight though in terms of skill set. Let's go ahead and get right into it. Erroll Spence Jr. and Danny Garcia fought this weekend. I want you to tell me what you saw in Danny Garcia since you picked him. I did too, but I want you to go ahead and start off.
Man, yeah. First of all, I want to start off by saying it was a great fight. It was action packed for the whole 12 rounds. I'll say that in terms of Danny Garcia, that was one of the most disappointing performances that I had for a boxer within the last 2 or 3 years, right? And I say it was disappointing because I feel like that's a classic example. If somebody asks you what is the difference between a Class A and a Class B fighter, this was the fight, in my opinion.
So are you saying that Danny Garcia is a Class B fighter?
In this stage in his career. And
okay.
the reason I say that is because even our buddy James, who's done the boxing night out with us, he said Danny always has issues every time he fights an athletic fighter, right? And this was his third title shot, and he didn't show up, right? We can sit here and say, okay, maybe Spence is just that great, but Danny's been through a lot of big fights. I thought he would have came out and switched it up, switched the game plan around. Everyone knows he's a counter puncher, but Spence is not going to just sit there and let you counter punch. So I just thought going into the fight, we were going to see something a little bit different, and we didn't see it. And the few times, the most annoying thing to me is the few times where he actually let his hands go, he connected.
Yep.
Right? He connected, and then he kind of fell back a little bit. And I'm like, dude, you know you're down 6 or 7 rounds already. You have to switch it up. You got to do something different. So I was thoroughly disappointed. I thought it would have been close. It was a close fight. All right. He won a few rounds. It's not like he got completely shut out. I was expecting a bigger or better performance.
Okay. So are you saying that you were disappointed because you thought that Danny could be, I guess, put himself in a position to be more dangerous?
Yes.
Because he's obviously done it before. And we know that Spence, although he's a great boxer, he likes to mix it up. So you do think that Danny didn't take advantage of the situations when they appear, presented themselves, so to speak?
Clearly, I'll give you a perfect example. In the 7th round, he caught him with a right. Spence kind of backpedaled a little bit. He got stunned. Instead of jumping on him, especially at this point, you know you're down a bunch of rounds, right? You have to let the hands go. And people will say, oh, it's easier said than done. But at this stage in the game, what other game plan did you have? You're not more athletic than him, all right? And you were just literally standing in front of the guy. You didn't really move like that. He walked you down from the opening bell. From round 2, I already know what type of night it was because Spence came out sharp.
Yeah, so look, I think when this fight was first announced and everything, we looked at a lot of different factors and what the outcome would be. Firstly, was about, can Spence recover from being basically at the height of his career, having almost a life-threatening accident, as well as preparing for somebody like Danny Garcia and not having to look past a Terrence Crawford. So it was a lot in one pot to kind of deal with, and we thought that maybe it would be too much for one particular guy in Erroll Spence. I want to talk about a little bit about his performance, because if you think about the times that we've broken down the fight, exactly what Spence did, we said that he could do. Yeah. We just didn't know if he could do it because of everything that's in that pot that we were talking about, everything that was brewing, and if Danny Garcia would show up a little bit more motivated or have that knockout puncher's chance. So I'm going to start off by saying this. Erroll Spence Jr. is just that fucking good.
Yeah, he's a beast.
He makes things that are really hard look too fucking easy. And one thing I'm going to say about Danny Garcia as a guy who waits, and I think he still threw 700 punches in this fight, which is about 200 more than his last 2 fights. So he actually did bring his game up, and you weren't even able to tell because Spence is that fucking good. Like, this dude will literally beat you down with the jab. So, I think that Danny actually did pick his game up, but it still wasn't even close to being enough for this guy, Erroll Spence Jr. As soon as the first 3 rounds, I kind of knew it was going to be. I was happy because all the keys that I broke down, essentially they played out at some part where Spence was really outworking him from the outside. Danny was trying to move his feet, trying to counter, but he was also mixing it up a bit too. So shout out to us to know what we're talking about. But I just think Erroll Spence Jr. is that fucking good, man. I think we're looking at a dude he's a generational fighter. We're going to see him win at 140, 147, 154, and 160. And sooner or later, he's going to be the guy people are going to say, this is the guy that can beat Canelo Alvarez.
Just look at his last 4 fights. Look who he beat: Mikey Garcia, Danny Garcia, Kell Brooks, Sean Porter. Come on, his last 4 fights, he's beaten nothing but solid fighters. But on the flip side, right, I think that Danny Garcia is this generation's Oscar De La Hoya. Right? Every time Oscar had a big fight, he lost against Mayweather, Bernard Hopkins, Manny Pacquiao retired him. And if I'm not mistaken, he also lost to Shane Mosley, correct?
Oh, yeah, but that was like that. Right? Those Shane Mosley, though, those 2 fights, who we don't talk about enough is Shane Mosley. That would be a dude if he came back and one of these older fighters, him, or if you start De La Hoya versus, getting off topic here, but De La Hoya versus Trinidad?
Yeah.
Bro. Yeah. But no, that's a good analogy or good comparison in terms of career. I do think De La Hoya, when he was in his prime, he definitely capitalized on some of those bigger fights.
No, but who he beat?
I mean,
when it was time for De La Hoya to fight the cream of the crop, he lost every single fight.
Bro, he did beat the Mexican god Julio Cesar Chavez. He did beat him. He beat Ike Cortez, I think it's Ike Cortez. He beat Pernell Whitaker. He actually did beat Felix Trinidad. Let's keep it real.
Okay, but were those fighters in their prime?
He beat Fernando Vargas. Listen, it's great fights. Yes, it's been like 15 years. So I'm gonna come back to you with a list of people that because look, De La Hoya got it in, and so did Sugar Shane. Those are like throwback fighters in the time where like there was nothing but fighters at 147.
No, I'm agreeing with you. I'm just saying that when De La Hoya had to fight that main guy, the same way Danny Garcia, when he gets that 3 title shots, he's 0-3, But when De La Hoya had to fight a Mayweather, a Manny Pacquiao, a Bernard Hopkins, he got his ass whooped.
But those are all at the end of like the end of his career. You know what I mean? Like, and Danny Garcia is certainly there too. He might have 2 or 3 years left, at least fighting on the level he's fighting on.
I'd love to see him fight Adrian Broner for some reason. I think that would be a good fight.
Danny Garcia, that would be a banger. That would be a banger.
So just to segue a little bit, right? Kind of sticking on to Danny Garcia. I've had this conversation with a few people. What do you feel like? Because I feel like at a certain point in a fighter's career, if you come in the game with your father as your coach, I think you have to kind of switch it up just to get a fresh air and a fresh voice in your camp. And not to take away anything from his father, but this is the 3rd consecutive time when he had a chance to really do something and he came up short. And if you go back to those 3 fights, the game plans were the same. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, as somebody who was trained from his father, who was a professional fighter, he had over 150 amateur fights in the UK, had about 15 professional fights, I think, through the United States and the UK. I was trained by my father too, and I'll talk about some of the pros. You're going to get a wealth of knowledge every time that you're in the gym. So there's certainly you get to kind of skip a lot of steps. Also, you're going to be very, very comfortable in any situation because, like, this is your dad's home. You know what I mean? So those are some of the benefits. Now, the cons, well, I want to do this too. If you look at some of the greatest fighters, they're actually trained by their dad, right? Or their dad put them into boxing some way, somehow. Whether you're talking about De La Hoya, Roy Jones Jr., Sugar Shane Mosley. We just talked about Danny. We're talking about Danny Garcia, and even I think Andre Ward's dad before he passed put him in. So it's certainly a thing that happens in boxing. So I do think that what happens is this: you end up, you get so far with what works that you almost don't know how to make adjustments. Why? Because you've been with your pops or this one trainer for 15, 20 years, and you guys have been so successful at doing one thing or a few different things that when it comes comes time to come back to the drawing board, sometimes it's the father that's too prideful to say that I'm not letting my fighter grow. And he's looking at it from the standpoint of just that father and son relationship. Like, well, look at all the success we've had. It is working, right?
Yeah.
So there's 2 points to argue here. It's like, yo, listen, if you made it to the top of the game with your dad and you take some L's, like, yo, you are like, great fighters lose. But at the same time, to your point, if you're still fighting, you become stagnant. What do you do?
What do you do?
So I think I have the solution, which Teofimo Lopez, who's trained by his father, actually took on. They brought in another coach, Joey Gabash, who's a world class fighter, 2-time champion, I believe, as well as now he has a couple of champions under his belt. So now you have a different voice.
That's what I'm saying.
In your camp.
Yeah.
So I think that's the key, because you do want to, the one thing that a fighter wants, he wants everything to be the same. Almost like any other athlete. Like if you look at any athlete, they probably have a game day ritual, right? They're going to do the same steps over and over and over because that's how they get ready. So if you take away that comfort zone of removing the father, unless the father, like I think actually Miguel Cotto was trained by his uncle, and they got to the point where it was too tumultuous, to where, like, I don't know if you remember, but like, yo, Cotto used to get slapped in the little fights by his uncle. Like, so the shit was like, it was like high level intensity. But then he ended up going off to other trainers, and it still didn't necessarily make a huge difference, other than when he got to Freddie Roach.
Yeah, I mean, like, listen, I'm not saying just abandon, but just like you just said, have a different voice in that camp.
Yeah.
Because that's with any profession, any sport. You do your career the same way for 10, 15, 20 years, you tend to get a little stagnant.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think
that fresh air.
If Bill Belichick and Tom Brady can break up,
that's facts.
You know what I mean? If you look at if Phil Jackson can be removed from the Chicago Bulls.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean? If Shaquille O'Neal can leave the Orlando Magic who drafted him and give him all these money and to, like, breakups happen. You just have to be ahead of the game, ahead of the curve, and figure out how to do it the right way, especially in boxing, because it's not like a team and an organization's behind you to be, take on some of the blame. It's just you and your trainer. Yeah. So I think that the kind of to meet in the middle would be to add somebody to your camp.
Yeah. Okay, it makes sense.
So, and that, that's somebody who's, coming from, that exact experience. I know for me, I got to the point where with my father, he was like, we're going to work the jab until you perfect it. And, my style of learning wasn't necessarily that way, but we didn't figure that out till 2-3 years down the road, right? So you have to figure out what works best for you as a fighter. And if it's not your dad anymore, you got to move on.
So your dad was like Mr. Miyagi. He had you waxing on for like 10 hours a day?
Like in front of the mirror. And if I didn't bring the jab back to my chin every time, we'd start back. We're going to throw 100 jabs perfectly. And then from there, it's going to be the cross. If we were working on a punch, if we were working on a combination, it'd be like 3 rounds for that one combination.
Damn.
So, and that was just how he was brought up. But, somebody who played other sports, there was other things that I wanted to add into, you know what I mean? Yeah. So actually, when I broke off to go to New York, obviously I left my father and I was able to get into some camps, and I worked with some other high level coaches. The best coach I worked with was Colin Morgan.
Yeah, Colin.
And, but when he seen me, he totally wanted to rip apart my whole entire fight game and fight technique, because the way he fought and the way he taught was totally different. So that actually put me behind a little bit, because now I'm trying to relearn what somebody else wanted. So that's why I'm saying it's not always the best thing to just go to another trainer, because it's going to be really hard for you to unlearn some of the habits that are most natural to you.
Yeah. All right.
So, that's just, from my experience. Now, so we heard recently that Snoop Dogg, to segue into the next topic here, Snoop Dogg has got a contract with, is it Thriller or is it Triller?
Thriller.
I was fucking up the Zone and Danza.
I'm pretty sure it's Thriller. It's Thriller.
Okay, all right, because I think it might be spelled without the H.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So, but what we said on the last show that Snoop Dogg was pretty much at least 50% of the entertainment, and this motherfucker turned it into a whole bag. Tell us a little bit about the details, man.
Yeah, so he's gonna be the host of 5 to 8 events a year with Thriller. He gets to pick the fighters, the performers, the venues. I don't know what percentage in terms of stake he has in the actual company, but he's going to be the face of the fighting company. I think it's called Fight Club or
The
something
Fight
like
Club,
that.
I think it's
The
called
Fight
the
Club
Fight
to
Club.
that extent.
Yeah.
And to
Which
me, I love when I hear stuff like that because that means the company listens to the fans and to the peoples, because he was the number one trending topic that night until Nate Robinson got knocked out. And we kept on saying, like, listen, we need to hear Snoop on fight cards every single time. And literally a week and a half later, they announced this news, right? So it can only go up.
they
I'm excited.
capitalized. Big big ups, big shout out to them, because they literally capitalized on seeing what their audience wanted and kind of reacted to it quickly. You know, it'd be super dope if Snoop actually commentated golf. That would, to me,
It would make me
that
watch
would bring so many other people over to golf. I don't think it's gonna happen, but
Yeah.
I was like, yo, Snoop would turn up in the whole, because golf, you know, it's real quiet and it's very, politically correct. So I thought that was really funny. But big shout out to Snoop. That's huge for him. He was literally half of the entertainment. If you take him away in some of those parts, it wasn't gonna be the same show.
Nah, and they have different ways to go about it. They can maybe tap into the older fighters like Mike and Roy Jones did. They can have the younger fighters on the undercard. They can get all these entertainers, because who's going to turn down Snoop if he asks you to perform at these venues?
Right.
So just from the first event that we saw, they hit it out the ballpark, and I think sky's the limit. So we'll see in the next year.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that we touched on in the last episode is that we think that what's happening here is here to stay in terms of their ability to put out entertaining shows. We do think it's going to be different from boxing, but I will say this to segue into our last topic here. The big money draw has been drawn in to jump into one of these exhibitions, which is kind of insane if you think about it. But if you think about what we're talking about, just from an entertainment standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. Was it yesterday or 2 days ago, Floyd Mayweather posted on his IG account that he is fighting Jake Paul in February for an exhibition match? What the actual fuck?
I think he saw the way that Nate got knocked out and he wants to avenge Nate's honor.
Yo, that's a great point. I'm gonna come back to that. That's a great point. I'm gonna come back to that.
Listen, Floyd is about the bag. I don't understand why people don't understand that. All right. Do you remember in Rocky 3 when he fought Hulk Hogan, when he boxed with Hulk Hogan? That's the stage that Floyd is in at this part of his career, right? He's like, okay.
People don't know, like, yo, this has been done before. Like Muhammad Ali went to Japan to fight some wrestler. Obviously, Floyd Mayweather's jumped in to the WWE.
Yeah.
Shout out to Designated Reports Wrestling Podcast. Also, you had Tyson Fury jump in the WWE more recently as well. So it's something that happens. You know what I mean?
Listen, you take the average person and you say, hey, all right, you're retired. Or you take the average boxer, say, hey, come out, come fight Jake Paul. We'll give you 15, 20 million. It's going to be 10 minutes of work. Every single boxer will sign up for that because they're about the bag. All right. So don't think like any boxer is above it. It just happens to be that he's fighting the older brother of the guy who just knocked out Nate Robinson and turned him to a meme. But here's the thing, though. Imagine, because anything is possible. Imagine if he was to knock out Mayweather, though.
Bro, I don't even want to imagine that, because it would discredit boxing, and it would be brutal for boxing if that happened.
But the jokes, though.
I mean, listen, I'm worried about boxing if that happens, right? The jokes are gonna come through. It's gonna be endless. And you know what? It'd actually be hilarious, because the one guy that probably deserves it is Floyd Mayweather.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I hope it doesn't happen, though. So I want to go back to one of your points just in the beginning there, where you talked about Floyd Mayweather being friends with Nate Robinson. So boxing gym etiquette goes like this. Let's say I work with a particular coach or two, and there's maybe 5 to 7 fighters that we all work with each other. Now, you might have like 5 or 6 of those camps in a boxing gym. So as we spar, what happens is, let's say if a guy gets the better of me, well, typically the best guy in our camp, or in our little clique, is then going to challenge that guy that just gave me work. I'm going to give you a story. So when I was working with Colin Morgan, I would always warm up Kid Chocolate. I was like his first 4 rounds. And there was like 2 or 3 other fighters that we would constantly spar with. And there was other pros inside as well. So one day, kid doesn't show up. This is around the time I think he had to get his appendix removed. And another pro, I'm not going to say his name, we decided to put some work in. So to make a short story even shorter, basically he got me out there in 2 rounds. Yeah. And what my coach did was he just pulled me out because he realized that this guy was just going to knock me out.
Yeah.
So the next week when Kid Chocolate came in, he heard the news, he got in the ring with him, and then, you know, put the work on that dude. So that's kind of how boxing gyms are set up. So you were spot on in terms of what gym etiquette is in the boxing culture. So Mayweather was probably like, all right, well, I'm gonna go get paid and I'm gonna redeem my man. So well,
if you look at his Instagram post, he had a whole post dedicated to Nate Robinson because, you know, Floyd didn't appreciate the jokes, and he's like, listen, it takes, you know, a lot of guts to go in the ring and to try to fight. So, you know, all you guys sending these memes out there is not the right thing. And, you know, Nate is my boy. So maybe it just aligned itself perfectly to say, let me get the bag and let me go knock this dude out.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Oh. One thing I will say this is that people say that Nate Robinson is 5'9". In that post that you're talking about that Mayweather put up on his Instagram, they're the same height.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, Floyd Mayweather's like 5'6", son.
Yeah.
So Nate Robinson was actually 5'6", 180 pounds fighting a guy who's probably closer like a legit 6 foot, who probably walks around at 200 pounds. Yeah. Now, I will say that's the one thing that Jake does have going for him in this fight. He's going to outweigh Mayweather probably by 40, 50 pounds maybe. So, you know.
Listen, the round is not going to go 8 rounds. Floyd is going to take him 8 rounds. That's the difference.
Because, right? You know, Floyd is going to bet on himself, right? He's going to go to Vegas. He's going to put $1 million on himself. He's going to pick the round where he's going to end it. That way he gets the bag 2 times over.
Yeah, no, of course.
And people that's what he did with the Conor McGregor fight, which a lot of people don't know, is that motherfucker bet on himself. And he, you know, after a specific round, and then it was, you know, it was downhill from there for Conor.
It's entertainment, man. We have to find a easier way of telling people how to understand, like, when it's real boxing is real boxing. All the other stuff is just entertainment. So yeah, I saw it. I didn't go too crazy about it. I'm like, it is what it is at this point. They're getting their bag. They're getting their money. So I don't feel like he's defaming the sport or he's bringing the sport down. Like, you know,
I just think that Jake Paul doesn't deserve this kind of bag for a guy who's had 2 professional fights.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
but you know what? It's like how you even said in one of the older podcasts when I was talking about Conor McGregor, he's just a big draw in the UFC. But Jake Paul got like 50 million followers behind him on YouTube. So a lot of the people who's going to tune in to watch it are his loyal supporters. So that's going to generate money. Me, I wouldn't just give him that opportunity just because who he is. But I see, like, money-wise, I see why they make these fights. But just take it for what it is.
That's, you know, and we'll go back to that point again. I feel like I'm a boxing purist. I think that you're a boxing purist. But I also think that I'll say that maybe we're just young enough to realize that you can separate an entertaining experience from what something actually is in terms of a sport, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. So, you know, that's pretty much all our topics. There's been so much going on lately. Is the biggest fight next is the Joshua fight?
I think it's Joshua. Yeah. Yeah. Wow, we're going to have to get the date on that.
This weekend, right?
Yeah.
So we'll definitely be looking out and checking that out. So real quick, I do want to shout out to a bunch of viewers who's tapped into some of the things that we've been doing recently. We've been shortening up some of our clips, putting them on YouTube, and it's really exploded. So I just want to shout out to everybody that's tuned in, who's hit the like, who's checking out what we're doing, man. We really appreciate you guys. And we're going to keep trying new things to see what you guys want. Just stay locked in and tapped in.
Facts.
All right, so this is episode 10. Gene, go ahead and let them know where they can find us.
Yes, you can find us on all streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple, Anchor, SoundCloud, and also on YouTube. Check the video, like it, subscribe, share it, leave us some comments. We're engaged with every single comment that you guys post on YouTube. We will respond, all right? Thank you.
Word. Peace.